was about fuel mix. I was wrong. I'm going to take a slightly contrarian view, and let's see what you think. There's very little about this that I would call a fuel mix consultation. Just two very different options presented without any of the information that I, as an energy guy, who's someone spend my life doing this, would normally think would help inform my decision. I don't quite know what to make of it. I don't know how to make the choice. It's a pity, and in some ways it's kind of like saying ready, fire, aim. Here are two options, let's make a decision, we'll sort it out later. It's not like the two options are bad, it's just that what we know about them makes it very difficult to interpret them. So I want to explain how I see those choices. And before us, and if you just gave me those two choices, why I personally would choose the local option and reject the interconnection one. As Robert discussed, there are many, many issues before us. They're all very complicated, they're all very interrelated. And they all beg the questions. How are we going to fit all of this in? That's the context in which you make a decision. So I would prefer that we sort out the kind of the regulatory context, the values, how we incorporate those values, how we plan, how we think about things, what are the costs, what are the benefits, what do we need to know technically, whatever, and not just throw it up to a vote. It's true. Significant transmission infrastructure takes a lot of time. It's also true that it's not like flipping a switch and having the lights just go on because we built this line. Some of you are going to be very technically aware of electricity systems, some of you are not. I'm going to say something that will offend the technically aware and hopefully inform those who are not. Think of the power system as a piece of paper or a cookie sheet or something, and fill it up with a little bit of water and hold it on one hand out here and try to balance it so that the water flows just exactly where you want it to. Now, put on the other hand another cookie sheet, fill it up with water, and put a straw between the two. And now make sure that the water's flowing between the two cookie sheets just the way you want it to. Never too much, never too little, never burning out a wire, never disappearing, never stopping unexpectedly, and never spilling over. It's not that this can't be done. Technically minded people solve this problem all the time. It's just that when they do solve this problem well, both sides, both cookie sheets, understand how they're operating. They know each other really well. They understand the rules by which things are done on this side and the rules by which things are done on that side. They understand the cost implications of relying on one side and the other side. They understand that if something goes wrong, how they will deal with it. And they understand the probabilities of that. And then they can make some guarantees or assurances. So first thing you do before you think about interconnection is you say, do we have that kind of understanding? Are we comfortable with that? Do we know what it will cost? Do we know what it will do? I'm not trying to paint a scary picture because, like I said, this problem can be solved. But some of the prerequisites of solving it well require that China do things differently than it does now. One thing we know about China's power system is that it has grown extremely fast. Well done. Another thing we know is that China struggles to figure out how exactly it's going to keep making its power system meet its needs. How does it operate that system efficiently? Plants are not dispatched because of their generation costs. They're allocated hours based on various criteria that are somewhat, frankly, arbitrary. Tariffs are not set on an economic basis. They're tracking cost increasingly compared to what they used to do, but it's not what we would say is cost reflective. And they charge the people who have more money more than they charge the people who don't have any more money, and I don't think Hong Kong will come out the better of a deal in that sort of situation. So, as China figures out how to run its power system, it's got to build transmission systems, it's got to figure out how to get resources that are far away from people, it's got to operate that, and it can't even model the way the system works because it doesn't dispatch the units on an economic basis. So if you don't know the rules by which plants are going to be dispatched, how do you model a transmission system? Think about that. Unless you can actually impose order to the way you use resources that follows some kind of mathematical, trackable value proposition, how do you model an integrated system of all of those components? So they cannot operate their power system the same way Hong Kong can operate it. That's not a skill issue, it's not a technology issue. It's the fact that the information that flows there is not the same as ours. So in option one, that's what Hong Kong connects up to. As an energy guy, I have a problem connecting my water-filled cookie sheet balancing app, which in Hong Kong has delivered exceptionally, predictably, reliable, and high-quality power up to a cookie sheet that I don't understand what kind of cookies are baking. I just want more information. Not a judgment, simply a question. Do I have what I need to make that kind of decision? You don't make big, complex, expensive, high-cost investment decisions with a far-off and highly uncertain benefit without a lot of better information. So some might consider that option two is maybe arbitrary or expensive because of all the gas that's in it. Let me just say 2 words about that. First, I don't understand where the 60% comes from. Does anybody really understand why you would pick a number like that? So, you don't run a power system based on fuel mix targets. You don't commit to arbitrary numbers when things you know are going to change. Fuel costs change, technologies change, performance change, preferences change, environmental standards change. You don't want to be committed to use lots of expensive gas from Turkmenistan because you have no other options available. You don't want to be in a position where you have no alternatives to consider. You don't want to be without choices. Having choices means having control. Having control means having the ability to make decisions about spending money wisely. And spending money wisely is what affordability is all about. If you spend your money wisely, you have more of it. You can do more things with it. If you decide what you want to do with it, you have it, and you can apply it. Right now, I can assure you natural gas in Asia is very expensive, and the price of natural gas is very volatile. I don't think governments enjoy raising tariffs, and I don't think the power companies enjoy asking for tariff increases that don't benefit their shareholders, because it's just a fuel cost pass-through. I don't see a winner there. So why 60%? Where on earth did this come from? Goodness sakes, I have no idea. Some might say gas is cleaner. I don't think so. I think if gas is so expensive compared to other things, then I can come up with something that bundles some coal and some other stuff, creates an overall package that's better than just the gas all by itself. You just have to be willing to be creative. You have to be willing to take off the constraints on fuel mix. You have to be willing to think outside the box, and you have to be willing to think about coal. Personally, I would get the chemical and electrical engineers who know something about emissions controls and get them in a room and say, what can we do with a coal plant? What can we do with the technology we have to reduce all the non-carbon emissions to a level that we consider is comparable to what a gas plant could be? And I think you can come very close to that. And so if you can get the non-carbon emissions of a coal plant fairly close to a gas plant, or close enough to a gas plant, what are we talking about? We're talking about carbon. And neither coal nor gas solve our carbon problem. And switching from coal to gas just makes it very expensive. Robert put the European projections up. They have access to some cheaper gas. North America has access to some cheaper gas. We don't. If we want affordable power with environmentally friendly conditions, our package ought to be some renewables, because that doesn't use gas, some coal at the most efficient level, and some international agreements about how we manage our carbon. And the delivered outcome would be a more affordable price of electricity in Hong Kong, a greater contribution net to carbon globally, maybe a first favorable move toward some kind of willingness to make this a global solution rather than just a bunch of local solutions. And all the flexibility and all the optionality that you might eventually need or want to evaluate how transmission interconnection and other things can be integrated into the future. Oh, that's my 10 minutes. So I will stop there and vote 2.